My best description of Atomic Heart would be if Bioshock and Fallout had a baby, then kidnapped Ash from the Evil Dead to play in their world. I'm here to share my thoughts on Atomic Heart and ultimately whether I believe it's a worthwhile buy and at what price. Thematically, I found the setting pretty interesting. It's set in the Soviet Union, which I will most admittedly mistakenly refer to it as Russia throughout this video. Sue me. It's been a long time since the Soviet Union existed and I was still youngish when it fell. This version of the Soviet Union, like a lot of period pieces, looking at you Bioshock, had both a retro and futuristic feel. I had to look it up and there is actually a term for it, retrofuturism. By far, the most futuristic part of this game would be the robots. There was a large variation of them in this world. Atomic Heart had a goofy and horrific feel throughout it. It reminded me of Fallout in the way everyone just accepts that everyone else is just crazy, including themselves. They definitely try to lean into the crazy goofy with this game. The main character receives a glove at the beginning of the game that houses an AI. This AI would be who you had most of your conversations with. The banter between the two, for the most part, did help with the enjoyment of the game overall, though there were times I felt that the interactions were a little awkward or the jokes or statements just kind of fell flat. At times it really seemed as if the two voice actors had never actually interacted and both had just read their lines alone in the studio. Then the lines were cobbled together, making the flow of the conversation feel completely unnatural. This was a little immersion breaking for me. The voice actor who played the main character, Sergi, or P3 as he was mostly referred to, had trouble at times. It was as if he was trying to channel Ash with his quips and comments throughout the game. For the most part, he didn't do a bad job, just often it wasn't fully there. It did perturb me, but not enough to turn me off entirely from the game. And since I'm obviously still having problems with narration, I'm not on solid ground to talk. I did just want to point it out, as I know for some that subpar voice acting can break a person's desire to play the game, and I think it's a valid thing to care about. As for the storyline, you start off working your way through a city as it begins a celebration parade. All the abundant robots will eventually end up going psycho during the opening part, and they'll start murdering everybody they can find. And you're ultimately given the mission to find a person who is believed responsible for the robot attack. As you proceed through the game, your objectives will slowly change over time. I don't want to spoil the plot for you, so I'll leave you with the premise and stay general on my thoughts. I will say the plot part is pretty generic, nothing too new in terms of lots of robots, something happens to them, they turn on people, it's your job to find out what happened and either fix it or kill said robots. The plot twists were pretty predictable in my opinion. That said, I don't have a problem with recycled premises as long as the actual game is fun and it does enough to differentiate itself in the genre. I felt it did differentiate itself. But even though it was pretty easy to see the twist coming, I will say I was shocked by the ending. The endings left me severely dissatisfied. As much as I'd like to go into this, I don't want to ruin it for people who might want to play and discover the endings, as I want this to be a spoiler-free, review. So to sum it up, this section's world setting, retrofuturism, killer robots, a little subpar voice acting, overall left me feeling slightly on the negative side. Onto the actual start of the game, I think they really missed with their opening. While it did have nice visuals, it definitely dragged on. The intro could have been trimmed down by quite a bit, and I think it would have done a lot better. But that said, actual gameplay once I got to it was fun and immersive. You start off with just basic axe, but quickly get various melee weapons and guns. and then you'll acquire skills based off of a polymer invention that plays a giant role in Soviet society and is a driving part of the story. Combat, for the most part, was pretty straightforward. Swing your weapon, shoot stuff, or use your skills. You also get a pretty effective dodge ability, if you can get the timing down. Fighting is actually pretty easy. If you find it too easy, it looks like in the menu you can adjust the difficulty during your playthrough, so there is that. Combat was pretty forgiving when you made a mistake, and healing items are extremely plentiful. If you have trouble, you can take perks with absorbed polymer from enemies. These perks can be used to upgrade your character's health, damage mitigation, and many other things to increase your survivability. I recommend getting skills that make you invulnerable while dodging and, things like that. You'll spend the first 5 or so hours on pretty strict rails. You are in an underground facility running around doing objectives. There's not much in the way of exploration other than finding small offshoots like, little extra rooms or something behind the walls and stuff like that for some loot or schematics to upgrade weapons. But there's not much since you're restricted to one underground facility. Several hours into playing, you'll finally get topside and out of the facility and things start to open up a little bit. You'll definitely get some more freedom, some other optional facilities to visit for weapon and upgrade schematics. This is around where the difficulty is going to spike for the game. The normal mobs didn't really get harder, just that there are way more security cameras and the overmap has infinite respawn and repair, which gets annoying when you're just trying to scope an area out. The first boss actually does not appear in the game until you get to this section. I will tell you now, I was not prepared. Fights until now had been extremely easy. You could kind of brain dead through them, and I'm a low skill player, so I got my face smashed in. It took me quite a few tries before I got the hang of the fight, and this is the part where, as I mentioned, skills. I implemented buying the perks that raise survivability. Once I had actually taken the time to spend my gained resources, the fight actually ended up being a lot simpler, and future bosses were really not that challenging. I didn't have a death to a boss again until at the very end. And that said, the final fight frustrated the hell out of me. Not because the fight itself was too hard, but the fight opens with several QTEs that end in instant death if you mess up. I hate QTEs, and they absolutely infuriate me at times. And this was a time when it really infuriated with me. What I will say is once you finally get through those QTEs, if you die in the actual battle, which I died once, I will say it skips you past that scene where you have to do it. So you don't have to worry about having to repeatedly do the QTEs if you die in the battle. Once you get past that, you just go straight to the battle. So there is that at least, but it still killed me. Alright, and as for the open world, I did feel slightly disappointed with it. There was no real incentive to explore it after I had spent some time looking around. I quickly came to that conclusion because other than standard mats, there's not really anything to find on the surface. You'll go to each area, scope it out. It's pretty empty except for enemies, and there's not any, special resources you're gonna find even in the lightly scattered buildings and things like that. Your loot is actually going to come from the aforementioned optional facilities. So those are about the only places worth visiting, and those facilities are pretty much a small, straightforward path where you complete puzzles to gain loot. In there, you'll get some, rare resources, and you'll get schematics for actual weapons or upgrades to the weapons. And I do like, one thing that I really do like is when you go to the map and you open it up, you already have everything discovered, and you can look at each facility on the map, and it's going to list what schematics are in each of the optional facilities. That way you don't have to sit there and wonder if you missed something. You can just look, and it actually marks off once you've collected, so you know that you already have it or not. Saves you the trouble if you're the completionist who wants to get every single schematic. You don't have to go look up a guide and say, okay, where is all this stuff. You can actually get it from within the game itself, and I think that was a very good move by the devs. Now, to get on to something that I did enjoy a lot, weapon modification, skills, perks. I really think this is where the game shined. Not because there was anything there that you really haven't seen before in any of these types of games, but because they did one of my favorite things. The ability to disassemble and return skill points with no BS cost or cooldowns. So you have the freedom to experiment with skills and weapons to find what you like most. The only thing you need to do is either find the weapon or the schematic to build it. I do like that skills run on cooldown, and some of the guns use a refillable energy bar. This makes it so you don't have to get bogged down in constant ammo management by use of free weapons and switching to ammo based on ones when necessary. Especially if you take perks that help make all of the free ammo ones more efficient in terms of either recharging or expenditure of that energy. Now, in terms of lore, you learn about a lot of the game through email communication terminals and recordings called chirpers. While a lot of it is just kind of adding flavor to the world, there are some that give you background information that help understand the world you are playing in and everything that is shaping the events that is happening throughout the game. Some things in the game will really seem bare bones if you're not someone who likes to go around finding and reading lore stuff. I will say the story does get a little convoluted in trying to make it so every single character has hidden agendas and the like, and it ends, as I've mentioned, in utter disappointment for me. Now, for the music, I can't make up my mind. Overall, like the music is good. It definitely had high production value, but the way it was implemented could definitely drive me nuts at times. It didn't always match with what was going on, which I kind of understand. They're going for the goofy feel at times, so you're gonna get that. You're gonna get goofy music during a high intense battle, which to me can be distracting. And what really made it even more distracting is that when you entered into some high intense battles, it would get really aggravating because they'd choose to crescendo the music to obnoxious levels, and I don't like my ears bleeding while I'm trying to fight. It was distracting, and it became immersion breaking as I had to consider whether I wanted to pause the game, adjust the settings down so that it wasn't ridiculous while I was trying to fight, knowing full well that immediately after the fight I'd have to adjust settings again so that everything else was at normal volume. So I'd have to keep doing that. And if I had to do that every single intense fight, it's definitely brought down the enjoyment. So the music really did kind of ruin what should have been the most exciting parts of the game for me. As for technical information on running the game, I don't have much to say because I'm not good at getting down to the gritty details. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post my computer specs in the description. I'm not super ancient, but I'm not a top tier computer. As for how well it runs, I did pretty well in the beginning section of the game, but once I got to the upper world, I started getting several second freezes, so there was quite a bit of stutter for me. After playing for some time, I would end up having to restart the game client and sometimes the computer entirely. These freezes weren't game breaking, it wasn't, didn't go on long enough to completely ruin the game, but it was pretty annoying. But so far, I was still able to play the game pretty comfortably. I will say it does seem a bit under optimized, and the file size for the game was ridiculously huge compared to most of my other games. So that did create a little bit of problems for me. Now, on to the big question. Is it worth buying, and at what price? Short answer, a slight yes, but at a very steep discount. Especially if you like games like BioShock and Fallout. Gameplay like BioShock and crazy like Fallout. Just recognize this game does have its deep flaws, like I mentioned. So, while similar, I would not put it on the same level as them. Sometimes I feel like Atomic Heart tries a little too hard to be like them. And the yes, if I break it down, is mostly for the gameplay and not the way the story crapped the bed. I would say, story is decent until the end, and then it just kind of ruined itself for me. Now in terms of prices and everything, I will say I'm very not happy with its retail price. Currently it sits at $59.99 on PC and $69.99 on console. And that's just for the base edition. If you want all the DLC content, then you're starting to look at a range of $100 to $120 for the entirety of it, the full game and the DLC. And that's really dependent on whether you buy it all at once or you buy the base game and then you get the DLC later as time goes on. Gaming prices are getting ridiculous. I wouldn't want to pay more than $30 for everything, base game and DLC. Overall, I'd recommend you also wait on a deal. It came out in 2023 and sales have really started for it now in 2025. The historical low was set this year at $17.99 on Steam, but it's also been Humble Bundle's choice for October of 2025, which was $14.99 for 8 games during that month. So if you are interested, keep an eye out, and you should find it at a reasonable price in the near future. Keep in mind, you may end up having to buy the DLC story parts as it is relevant to the sequel if you plan on Atomic Heart 2. If you have any feedback on what you would like information-wise in future reviews, please let me know. I'm new to trying to create content for people and would like to know what my audience wants. My goal with the review video parts of my channel is to help people feel more informed on the game they are getting so they don't have to feel buyer's remorse. I hope that these reviews will go well with the sell listings that I will regularly try to upload so people can catch deals. Everything's going to be a work in progress for a while, so I appreciate all the feedback you can give. For any who enjoyed my Subnautica story, I'm working on one for Atomic Heart. Not completely sure how I want to handle it, but I'm thinking of naming it something along the lines of Atomic Heart or When a Skyrim Ice Mage Got Isekai'd into a Sci-Fi World. It's a work in progress. I am considering dropping a teaser concept trailer in the near future. Anyways, if you made it to the end, thank you so much. I appreciate your watching.